So welcome everybody. My name is Jamie Sundsbak and I'm the founder of BioAM. And BioAM has one mission in Rochester, and that's to create a biobusiness startup community. We think community is very important. We think that as businesses grow in Rochester, we're going to need a strong community of people to help foster biobusiness. So we have a lot of events. If you go to bioam.org/events, you'll actually see all the events. We have 3 or 4 events every month to sort of bring together the community and promote what I call a lot of random collisions among people. Networking is key to what we do here. This is the Founder Series, which was an idea that I had about 6 months ago. Because we are such a young community as far as biobusinesses that are coming out of Rochester, what I really wanted to do was bring in people from other communities to actually tell their story in their own words of being an entrepreneur, being a founder, and the journey it takes, probably the ups and downs as well. So kind of give you an idea of what it's like to be an entrepreneur in this journey that is exciting and terrifying at the same time. We would like to thank our supporters, first and foremost, Life Science Alley, for doing a fantastic job of providing the food and drink tonight, so we thank them for that. We also want to thank the BioBusiness Accelerator for hosting the event. There's some amazing businesses that are coming out of, that are basically incubating in here right now. They're going to be amazing businesses, I think, in the future. What else do we want to talk about? It was through a couple of these random collisions that I actually ended up meeting Paul. The first one was at Mayo's Transform conference last year, where I was fortunate enough to help facilitate a breakout session. And as the room kind of cleared out, and I was happy I was done with my session, and the pressure was off, I could enjoy the conference. Actually, someone who turned out to be Paul's wife actually approached me and said, "Hi, I wanted to get to know you." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Well, you're the only one out of all of these bios that says the word genetics in the bio." And she said, you have to meet my husband." And so I actually ended up skipping the next section of Transform to actually sit down and talk with her. And she's an amazing individual, and she played Paul up like just unbelievable. So then I started emailing with Paul after Transform, and we went back and forth a little bit. And then it was a second sort of random collision when I went up to the Twin Cities to attend an event about 6 months ago, I think. That was Seth Levine, who's the principal of the Foundry Group in Boulder, gave a talk on startup communities up in the Twin Cities. And I was kind of doing what the thing I do when I walk into a room and kind of scan around looking for people I know. And I picked Paul out right away because, as you'll tell, he's pretty tall. So he kind of stood out in the crowd. So we struck up a conversation. I knew as the Founders Series went on that I would want to have Paul come down and give a talk here in Rochester. So without further ado, we'll let Paul talk.
Thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate you having me here, and appreciate BioAM and the Accelerator for hosting this event. When Jamie asked me to do this, I had not put together a presentation really of this process and what it's like to be a founder, and really my unique story. And I do think there were some very significant learnings out of my experience, and as I continue to experience this process, that I believe will be valuable for any of you who like to move forward with starting a company, doing a startup. Not so much for the process as it is from a business standpoint, but more from a personal standpoint and the trials that you go through. In order for me to do that, I have to give you a little bit of background about myself. So bear with me as I go through a little bit of this to kind of explain who I am, so I can tell my story and you can better understand who I am. So the words on the screen for me are the 2 most powerful words in my vocabulary. They are powerful in the fact that they set in motion a dream, an ideal, the vision for a future that you can see and almost taste. And when you're putting a startup together, it usually starts with these 2 words. And no, I'm sorry, they're not these two words. Because I'm fired is not powerful. Sorry, Mr. Trump. And if I could trademark it, I definitely would. It's in my nature to do these types of things, but it's free for everyone to use, but it also comes with a great cost. So if we take some examples of what-if statements, I tend to think that maybe some of the wonders of the world were created with a what-if statement, and how powerful that was. I wonder who made the statement that created the pyramids, or even what we've gotten, what has caused wars and given us freedoms in these types of what-if statements. They're extremely powerful to drive change and opportunity, not only just in business, but in personal life. And even for some of us who are glutton for punishment, pigs have flown and health has frozen over. For us who have dared to dream about the Vikings going to the Super Bowl. So I know that's dreaming really pretty big, but it's a dream, right? So to explain to you where I came from, I had this really interesting decision in life. And it was at the end of high school. I had 3 unique directions. I could go to seminary, I could go to get a degree in computer science, or I could be a graphic designer. And they were very unique, totally different opportunities. And I won't get into the boring aspects of how that happened. But I would have triple majored. It would have been great. I don't know if there's a job title or an opportunity around that, but my 18-year-old self, my logic around that was really about probability of, number one, what was going to be the best opportunity for me to meet girls, and number 2, what was going to be the best opportunity to get into the cool parties. So you can probably guess that I went to med school, right? Okay. So I was I went to graphic design school to be a graphic designer. And this is the essence, if I could put it down to one slide, what I learned was this statement. And one of our professors said it often. And this was a very loaded statement I found out later on in life, but it really meant, in his way of teaching us how design worked, if it does not add, it subtracts. And I carried that with me professionally and personally and tried to apply that to different areas of my life. And I kind of think about it like pruning a bonsai tree and trimming it. And the great satisfaction you get from envisioning something, building something by trimming it away and simplifying it and making something that's unique out of your head. And that's what building a startup is kind of like. You have this vision of the way the world could be, and you take time and care to prune it and to get it just right to match your vision. It doesn't always work that way, but it's a good illustration. And one of my favorite authors of that time, and the way I looked at design is very much in this quote, everything is design, everything. And Paul Rand, I someday gobbled up from a teaching and mentorship standpoint, read all his books, but it's really hard not to see the world that way once you think about it and how everything is designed, whether it's biology, whether it's product, everything has design. And I had a really great early career doing graphic design and creative direction, and it all came to a screeching halt because of this guy. So I put up the I Heart New York icon design for a reason. I had entered a piece into a contest that was judged by Milton Glaser, someone I looked up to, and he basically said, "Oh, it's good. I like it." And I knew I had kind of reached the point with which I wasn't going to get much more. I hit the level with which I was trying to attain success. And for a lot of other reasons, I said, okay, it's time to move on. So this is what I call a life pivot. And there are these things that come together with opportunities where you kind of grab hold and run with them. And maybe I think about it this way. I ask a lot of questions. I'm the annoying guy in the room at work that asks too many questions. And they get so tired of me that they say, go figure it out, Paul. I say, okay, give me a budget, I'll go figure it out. And instead of saying I don't know, I will find out. And that's what kind of led me to this next transition, and it's a problem that has haunted me. It's part of kind of my purpose in life to figure out what this question mark is in the center. It's the converging of qualitative and quantitative data. I mean, from my background in marketing, they're used for similar things, different ways to gather them. Let's think of qualitative as gathering surveys, doing interviews, things of that nature, much like we do in lean startup methodology, and quantitative. And they seem like they really should work together to provide the answer, fit together as a piece, but they really don't. And there's a lot of complexity in that gray space in between of the two data sets, just not melding very well together. And I've come to this kind of working conclusion that, and it's really confounding, but that we're walking contradictions, us as human beings. And I love people, and I think the reason why I continue to work on this is because people astound me. I sometimes imagine, I look out into the room, and I make up stories in my head about, Jamie, what is his lifestyle like? It's almost like stereotyping, and marketing is kind of like stereotyping. It's a legal way, an appropriate way of trying to guess about who you are as a person. And we use lots of data to do that. But what's really the paradox or the issue here is that we lie. And we lie to ourselves and we lie to others. And sometimes we don't realize that we're lying. And we're predictable, but yet we do things that are completely unpredictable at times. It's very, very baffling. And it's confused me for a long time. And I think it's one of those problems you just try to figure out how to bring harmony to. And it kind of led me to this. And I don't know if any of you have worked in website analytics, but this is a user flow from Google Analytics. And I spent years looking through data like this, trying to pull out behaviors, purchase habits, things of that nature to try to optimize the way people experience websites, and it moves on to mobile applications and things of that nature. And I look at this data and I see behaviors, I see people, right? And as I move along, we move into the discussion topics, the qualitative piece of things. I mean, we didn't have to do focus groups anymore. We just mined millions and millions of conversations, people talking about any topic under the sun. And it was at our fingertips, available to us in real time. I could see whether people preferred thin crust pizza, deep dish pizza. I could do it by geography. I could see it on a day-to-day basis and trending. It is amazing, right? So it was a really awesome time in terms of marketing, targeting, understanding people. And that's what I really love to do, is understand people. And I really made up this term because I'm still not quite certain what that middle ground is. So I found this term called qualitative. And it's more of a joke out of my uncertainty of whether we're moving in the right direction. But it's something to hold on to as we move forward. And it works because a whole ecosystem was built out of this. This is, it's probably outdated now, created a year or two ago, It's a slide I pulled on display advertising technology landscape. These are all the players of buying ads all the way to serving ads, and everybody involved. And it exists, it does well, so billions and billions of dollars of business are served on trying to understand you as an individual and serve you the right type of recommendation ad, things of that nature. And these are all the people that are involved. And this is a business that I was involved in. This is my business for 15 some years, right? And one day, I was driving by this. I drive by the Walker Art Center on a pretty consistent basis. And I don't know, has anybody been to the Walker? You've seen this sign, right? And I can't attribute the quote, and it really doesn't matter because I would see this, and one day it kind of clicked. And I read bits and pieces put together to present a semblance of a whole. Something came into my mind that I could not unsee, and it changed everything, right? And this is the image that I saw, right? So we look back, and all I saw is Frankenstein. And I wondered to myself, is this how we see people through the lens of marketing? These little bits and pieces of data that give this glimpse of what maybe sort of resembles human, but it's not really live, so that therefore we don't treat you like a human, right? I mean, is there an opportunity to make this better, right? And that was kind of the insight, and I use this image a lot. Number one, I love the movie, and I love the story, but how can we do better? How can we stop, as marketers, stop looking at people as this kind of freakish thing that we think is sort of human, right? And that's when these opportunities take place, right? Right place, right time, right idea. And I was sitting at the time in my boss's office, Dane Hartzell, at the time, and he encouraged me to submit a proposal to talk at South by Southwest. And I was like, sure. I mean, he's like, well, I really want to go to South by Southwest this year, so you better get in, right? So I'm like, well, I better pick something that's really interesting. And at the time, the trend was, let's talk about social networks, social media. And I said, let me think about this. I'll step back, I'll come back with a proposal, and we'll submit it. And that's when, beer gets involved, right? When beer gets involved, magic happens, right? It's usually several beers, but in my case. And that's when I met Dr. Fahrenkrug, who's in the audience today. And again, asking lots of questions, very simple questions. Dr. Fahrenkrug, by trade, is a geneticist. And it kind of led to this ongoing discussion. It led to saying, yeah, I'll help you put together a presentation. We'll co-present, at South by Southwest if we get accepted. It happened. And we put this really interesting presentation together with basically just this. This is the premise of it. What if genetic data was used for marketing? Ooh, wow. I went in with no expectations. Like, it makes sense to me. We're mining data from social networks, we're mining behavior through web analytics. Why aren't we mining this stuff in genetics? And I didn't know the answer. I was very naive, right? I mean, I'm not even part of the bio business. I don't understand that. I was very new to it. But that question led to this, the roller coaster, right? When we talk about this metaphor and founding a company, being part of a startup, and this problem is crude, but it's a really good descriptor of what this experience is like. And when it happens, and you're in the middle of it, it happens very fast. It was a really awesome experience, but hardly can remember half of it. And within like a week, founded a company, filed IP, published in Forbes magazine, like 2 days after just giving a presentation, like, have a product yet, working on a pitch deck, pitched our first VC, my experience, I tell the story, and I won't give names, but, I guess my mantra now is go big or go home. So my first pitch ever for this company was a pitch to a VC, and I flew it to Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley and asked for like $2.5 million. I'm like, hey, we're on a good roll. You might say yes, right? And it was a great experience. I never, the answer was no. And you're going to hear a lot of no's. You're going to hear a ton of no's. And they're all learning experiences. They'll give you feedback. You use that feedback as a founder. You determine, is that valid feedback? Is this the right partner? You're feeling each other out. I mean, and it sometimes feels like hitting a brick wall. Like, what do you mean you're not going to give me several $1 million, right? I mean, that's kind of the attitude to a certain degree that you should have. It's like, you have the best idea in the world or the best product in the world, right? Even if doubt exists, that's the attitude, right? Okay? And when you run into these barriers, and you're going to run into a lot of them, and that's just part of the game, it's figuring out how to ask for help, right? And there is a huge community around you of people who have been entrepreneurs, are entrepreneurs, have done startups, great advisors, to draw from. And I encourage you to reach out if you ever have a question. And introductions are a great way to meeting people in the community, asking for help. And the other analogy that I use for startups, and this is actually, I don't know if you guys have ever played online games, but this is a graph of time spent playing and gaming skill. And these are a couple games that, and the joke is basically that the top game is really like, you might as well just give up in life because it's just so hard, right? I mean, it's like people are having huge problems, right? And I'm like, sometimes I wonder, should I pick this startup right here, right? Sometimes I feel this is my startup, and I think everybody feels that at a time. There is lots of complications, and whether it's personal, financial, trying to keep momentum, it's tough. And I'm gonna not lie to it, it's very tough, right? And that definitely feels like my startup sometimes. So what do you do next? You continue to build up the momentum. What we did is, got our advisory board together. We got a couple advisors in the crowd tonight. We got more press. So published in Wired, MIT Technology Review. Started signing on partners to help us build infrastructure. Really focusing in on refining and testing the business model. And of course, refining your pitch deck. This ongoing pruning of that bonsai tree that I showed you earlier. And we had momentum. It was great, right? But every up comes a down, right? And sometimes life will throw you curveballs, right? And sometimes at the most inopportune times, you're in the middle of momentum that you're like, I'm going to get through this last barrier, going to get funding, and we're going to go. And what happened to me was the first curveball was actually two curveballs. So this is my daughter, Eve. Eve is special in two ways. Number one, she was born with a heart defect. She was going into heart failure at 24 hours old. Her heart was, I believe, 3 to 4 times the size of normal. And we spent 4 months in the hospital with her until she got a valve repair. So that wasn't really the detractor this time. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor at the age of 4, which really, as a parent, throws you off your game. one of the reasons why I did the startup was for my children's children, the way that I saw the future, wanted to hand that to them as a gift and to their kids as well. So there's nothing more important than my children, and it really affects me and how I go through life if they're not doing well. So I think I can handle that. I've been through this before. And she flew to Boston, had the tumor removed, all's good. Back on course, right? And then, unfortunately, not more than a month and a half, 2 later, I lost my father prematurely to suicide. He was 60 years old. Devastating effects on myself, my family. And there's not much more I can say that I haven't said in the past, just that it's a very difficult thing to deal with as an individual, to reconcile those emotions. It just takes time, right? And this isn't a woe is me moment. This is life. Life happens, right? And sometimes you want to wave the white flag and surrender. And I did. I waved the white flag. I need time. I need time to think through this, to emotionally deal with this struggle. And what's amazing about going through these types of difficulties in life and this adversity is that you know how strong the team is around you, professionally, personally, things of that nature. I had phenomenal support around me. I was open, and they were always there for me. And really, because those what ifs that were dreams, visions, and aspirations at one point in time, they can churn on. What if I had done this? What if I had done that? And self-doubt and remorse and other things and guilt can take hold. And they do. This is part of life, right? But it passes, right? My favorite movie is Dead Poet Society. This is Robin Williams. He asks the students to stand on the desk and look at things in a different perspective. And when you is to look at life, shift your perspective, amazing things happen, right? And it did for me. It just took time. So I talk a lot about this interesting aspect of startups, especially pre-revenue. You have no money. You hope to God you're not eating ramen noodles because they're horrible for you. But as a founder, you're supposed to see the forest, right? You're the visionary. See the forest, but you're also building a product. So you're bouncing back and forth between, I'm looking at the tree bark, can't see the forest, I'm trying to get the details done, and all I can tell you is bring in the support you need to handle some of those details so you can zoom up on occasion to make sure you're on the right course. Tree bark bad, forest good. So how does that apply to where we're at today? And you guys may have had a little bit of a primer about who we are, and I'm not going to spend a lot of your time building a pitch or giving you our pitch deck. This is our model. It's very simple, right? We connect people with products and services and research firms through their genetics. And we have an MVP that allows people to upload their genotype file and gives recommendations right now on 20 different traits. Right? We can expand as more and more traits are researched. We may be researching them as well, but there are 20 traits. These aren't actual companies we're working with, they're examples of companies. It could be consumer packaged goods. The traits range in everything from health, lifestyle, dietary, exercise, behavioral. And if you're interested, I can share with you what we're looking at. Or maybe you have advice for traits that are interesting to explore. we're at MVP phase. We're moving forward. We've acquired several members who are going through a beta process right now. We're in the process of interviewing them, better understanding the value proposition, the value exchange that we're providing, whether it's correct, and we're building out storage infrastructure. So that's Miinome in a nutshell. And if you have more questions about it, you can definitely ask me. We'll have some Q&A, or you can come up to me afterwards. I just kind of want to summarize this point and what we've kind of covered, because this goes very fast. Startups, it's a roller coaster. I don't advise it for everyone. The ups and the downs are very high. It hurt us a lot like Texas Hold'em. Build it, right? Surround yourself with people that believe, not people that are just there for a payday or especially early on. People that believe in the same vision as you, that want to come along and share that vision. Draw a line in the sand. So this specifically was something that I put as a rule, and it was probably my only rule as it related to this venture, and that was this. You hear about a lot of companies, startups that are founded by young individuals who really don't have, relationships or children or anything to lose, right? I mean, they have everything to gain. I have a wife, I have 3 kids, I have a mortgage, I have, all the stuff that is the American dream. And what am I not willing to lose in this process? And I've seen a lot of relationships, marriages burn very quickly because of communication or just taking it too far. I know myself. I'm capable of taking it too far. And to see a dream come to reality. So I made a kind of a deal with my wife. If it's getting to that point, please tell me. Maybe a little bit beforehand. I don't want to lose my relationship over this, because what's the point, right? And then remind yourself and know. I mean, not even remind yourself, but what's your purpose for being? Not just your startup, but you. Why are you here? What is your goal in life? If you can answer that, you can do anything. And then the last thing, I think the thing that's most important is we're built to handle adversity. My story is not that different than some other people I've heard worse, right? And it's not woe is me. You go through crappy times. And it sucks. And sometimes you eat crappy ramen noodles. And hope that's the worst that happens. But we're built to handle adversity, and we bounce back, right? So don't give up if you think you've got something. That's about it. So, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
If you could share, the 23andMe has been in the news recently that FDA had shut them down as part of their service. Did that have any impact on your business?
Well, I think in the broader scheme, we look at 23andMe as a feeder system. So them slowing, if they have any growth problems, then we're feeding from not only just them but other services as well. The broader FDA question, we don't have any problems with that. Do you have a question?
So, as we walked with you here, and basically you found the revelation, what if genetic data was used for marketing? So you had the concept, right? So you had to start doing some research somewhere. What was the first breakthrough? Because this wasn't, this is a little bit discontinuous, or a little bit of, it's an idea about how do I get there.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, as you said, okay, a day later, we're pitching this and stuff,
Right.
and you've got a concept, and you've got some people, after a few no's, after a few dozen no's,
Right.
starting to latch onto this,
Yep.
okay? But you know, there's this gap between what you were saying and suddenly, here it is.
Right. So you're interested kind of more in how do we get from idea to MVP, right? There's something in between there, like, you know, how do I validate?
In a sense,
Right.
I've had many experiences where I stumble onto something, right? It's sort of serendipitous, okay, that I stumble onto a piece of technology or somebody says something, and the next thing that goes through my mind is, wow, you know what you could do with that? And it's not the negative, what can you do with it? It's
Right.
the positive.
Right.
It's like, wow, this could solve this problem X,
Right.
all right? And that sort of gave me, you know, not that it ever fulfilled, but at least it gave me sort of that little springboard. I need to pull in this thread, okay? But when I listened to you, you didn't have that piece of technology. You sort of said, what if we could do this?
Right.
You know, what if somehow we do it? So now you almost, I don't want to say reverse engineer, but in a certain sense, there is some reverse engineering in there to sort of say, okay, what pieces are lying around that might be able to help me tap into this?
Sure. Well, I think, so you asked a great question. And there, at the time, was no technology, I guess, that we had domain over that said, you know, gave us an advantage. What I think was a fundamental problem, and I think the problem, the way that we're tackling it differently, is that genetic data, as of this, you know, today, has been looked at as a tool for clinical usage, and that's it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. So the question I had was, how do we grow this faster? Because if it's only useful when you're sick, I mean, we have a long way to go. And how do we get people to care until it's too late and I'm sick, right? And that's where we kind of shifted perspective. I mean, my background in marketing, other co-founders in genetics, the other co-founders in data science, all different perspectives that we're able to communicate a different path to the solution. And what was really missing was traction. So the problem fit at the time when we started this was really non-existent. It's like, I don't have my genetic data, so I don't have a problem. We're looking at it from the lens of, it will be ubiquitous. The question is, when will it be ubiquitous? And can we help make it ubiquitous? And everybody has access to this data. Because we've all seen the hockey stick graph going the reverse direction, right? We know it's going to be dirt cheap sooner than later. The question is when? Timing. So the breakthrough for us was traction in other areas of the marketplace, like 23andMe's growth, right? And they went, when we started talking about this, they had 50,000 people in their database. They now have nearly 700,000, right? And it gives us an opportunity to test out our business model against the marketplace and see if our potential customer base can answer or has that need. Because they're already using personal data. Can we figure out a way to give you your data back and have you have more control over that information as we move forward as a society? So I talk about the broader implications of privacy, identity, things of that nature, which are very important to me personally, and will be just part of our platform. But that's not the way the market looks at it quite yet. They don't understand those problems. But it's important to me.
Okay, connecting marketing with genetics. You know, they each have their own sort of ethical considerations. Can you speak at all about navigating the ethics landscape of making that connection. For instance, somebody finds out, through genetic testing, they carry the BRCA gene, and how long until they start receiving coupons for mastectomy prosthetics?
Well, number one, we've carefully selected the traits we're looking at. So BRCA1, BRCA2 are not things we're looking at because we don't have a fundamental answer about how we feel about handling that. Ultimately, my perspective is your data. You can do with it as you please. Whether you fully understand it or not is a whole different matter. And we've kind of seen that from research and doing interviews, is that people don't understand probability very well, especially if it's not contextual, right? So I can look at something and say, you've got a 0.2% greater risk. What does that mean? I'm going to die tomorrow? Probably not, but depending on your biases, some people will look at that and go, no big deal. Some people will go, maybe it was a big deal, but that's not what I'm trying to solve. What I'm trying to solve is, can we make this applicable, useful on a daily basis? We make all these decisions every day that you could use this information to help make you, help educate you and make those decisions easier and more clear. I'm not saying it'll make your life better, because I can't. The FDA will not. But, fundamentally, this is a base set of you and your biases, right? You should be able to leverage those to make those informed decisions.
Great story. Having been on the roller coaster for 20 years, really.
Yeah. It's hard to summarize in like 30 slides, but
Two questions. As part of the genetic, are there blood samples and there swabs involved, or are you actually collecting genetic?
Saliva.
Pardon?
Saliva.
Yeah. Then are you a revenue?
No. Pre-revenue.
What do you anticipate? We're drawing the line in the sand.
We can talk after.
Could you expand, I think it was pretty interesting, qualitative, quantitative, new term. Is it in the Google now? Quality metrics, metrics, something like that, right?
Yeah, qualitative versus qualitative, or quantitative. Yep.
But you have the new word there, right?
Right.
So, besides your own business, does that term would be useful somewhere else also, in other businesses also?
That's a great question. I have not thought about that.
Just like a more technical question about protecting people's genetic data, like when they decide they want to give it to someone, maybe for a particular study or something, or how do they get it back? Are there any other models, systems where people, like with digital data, where people have like rights to something for a limited period of time and you can be sure that it comes back? That seems to be a big technical standing, stumbling block for, I think, being widely accepted, because eventually you feel like you'd have to trust, say, Pfizer, if you gave them your genetic data.
Right.
When am I going to get it? I'll sell it to you for this study, but if you want it for another study.
So it's like licensing, right?
Yeah.
And maybe even DRM. So like we turn around the companies and say, we're going to DRM our data.
Right.
We license it to you. It's interesting. We've looked into copyright, Creative Commons, things of those nature, and I think there's absolutely, we've seen this industry built on open source, right? We open up data sets, and it's under the premise of we de-identify this information, which is completely utter BS, because we know we can pull that stuff back together with the right other data sets, and so the value of the data is not necessarily de-identified. The value of the data is with identity. What we think is really interesting is that it's not just genetics, but this environment, right? So how can we marry the two? And my background is in mining for behaviors through the environment and through conversations. And what if we can bring those two worlds together? And that's what we're attempting to do to bring more value, right? Because it's saying it's just pure genetics, and we can build a model based on that, but the value is in mining the environment and bringing those two data sets
So
together.
it seems to me like what's really important for you is being able to connect those behaviors with that sequence, that genetic sequence. And then when you do that, like you say, you lose the anonymity. So yeah, that's where you need to have.
If you believe that anonymity actually existed anyways. Right? So all it can do is provide the best level of security for your data, right? And provide that platform with which you can see the value out of that, right? And that may come in the value of money or value of knowledge or savings, things of those nature, things that are uniqueness, rarity, scarcity. So on you asked the second question, which was from a research perspective, an interesting story. If you guys have a second. So, as my daughter was in surgery at Boston Children's, we were in the waiting room for 8 hours, the 8-hour session, right? And I won't say the name of the research firm that came up to us. They were very, very kind and handed me a 25-page release form. And my daughter's in the middle of brain surgery. And I'm like, really? You know, but I guess, you know, this will probably go better time. And I read through every single page and started asking myself, you know, maybe I'm not okay with giving away all this information. Maybe I just want to do this, this, and this. And so my wife and I went through the form and we kind of talked about it and said, I'm okay with the tissue sample, I'm okay with this, but I'm not okay with, you know, sequencing her and you having carte blanche over that, even though you say I can opt out at any time. I'm going to completely forget about this 2 weeks from now. And is this my data to give away? As a parent, maybe it is, right? As a caregiver, it is. But legally speaking, but as you know, I don't know how that can come back to her in the future. So my thought was, why does it have to be all or nothing, right? Why isn't there levels of consent? So that's something we'll be exploring too.
Or further to that, sorry, that's a great thought, like parts of your genome rather than the whole thing.
So everything we're doing is fully opt-in at the trade level. Yes.
So some entrepreneur questions. So do you have any tips what you do when you are kind of like in the low side of the roller coaster, as well as when you're seeing, you know, another tweet where you're just doing someone?
Cry.
Yeah. What do you do after?
Pro tip, don't stop. You know, it's funny, I reach out to friends, advisors. You know, they're that's what they're there for. They're there to give you encouragement, to get unstuck, to see things differently. I mean, even the best of us get stuck. It happens. Build a great advisory board, have great friends. Reach out to them. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help.
I was just wondering, what industry do you think would be the first one for your, you know, commercialization? Is it pharma?
Probably. Yeah.
Before consumer?
Probably. It's already happening. You know, I mean, if I were to tell you what the first one is, I'm probably giving away what my first contract is going to be, right? Yeah. You know, I think the health and wellness space is important, right? I know it's important to this institution. You know, I mean, it's how do we get in front of people and move away from the sick model to the well model, right? And the question I'm trying to answer is how far up that funnel are we going? Is it you know, right now, for me, it's adulthood, 18 years old. You know, some people push it even further. It's like, at birth, sequence, here's what you do, here's what you don't do, here's the plan. I don't know, that's maybe where it's going to go. You know, I'd like to have a stay in that, you know, but I think, you know, there's the wellness space is pretty broad. Diet, exercise, you know, even mental health, which is very important, near and dear to me as well. You know, we have a crisis in this country and a shortage of mental health services. You know, what can we do to help people that need help? So maybe I can answer those questions too.
Do you have any controls in place? Say, if I looked on your website, so the hair care products would be that a gene bald versus somebody else just did it when you started going bald, obviously, I think. But, to find out if you didn't use the genetic data, but you just went by the environment, that you got the same outcome. How do you even measure the advantage over
So,
the natural way of doing it?
we're experimenting with that. We've got a couple different ways we are testing and approaching that, just to make sure that people understand, how we're making those decisions and recommendations. Again, we have to be very careful about stepping over a certain line that has been kind of put in the sand in terms of processing and giving diagnosis. You know what I mean?
Well, I meant more of, are you going to let the companies that you're selling the data do the control studies to find out if they get any benefit from having marketing through genetics versus the way they already do it?
We'll be providing them reports, so it's very easy for us to see, the way that the way that we report that data back to them. They'll be able to know immediately whether or not it meets or exceeds requirements for their existing marketing channels. So if they continue to buy, then it does. Right.
So that would be exciting. I mean, that's going to be the day of reckoning. Right?
Absolutely.
People say, wow, that's
Yes.
better return on my investment.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.